Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March 25th, 2019 meeting of the South Lyon City Council. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All members are present except for Dan Pelchat and for Ms. Mary Parisian. Do I have a motion to excuse Dan Pelchat, please?
Motion to excuse.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to excuse Councilwoman Mary Parisian?
I'll make that motion to excuse Councilmember Mary Parisian.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Call for vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Next, approval of the March 11, 2019 minutes. Does anybody first have any changes?
I do.
Okay. Chair recognizes Councilman Kibble.
Page 2. See that downtown paragraph about 5 lines up. It should say, asked who would like closure. Is it the owner? And then I think that's the only thing that I had.
Are there any other changes from council? Is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I'll move the minutes.
Second?
I'll second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next, approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda tonight?
I'll move the agenda.
Is there a second? Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next, we'll move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda has 2 items. The first item is the approval of the Longevity Foundation 5K walk run. The second is the appointment of Craig Wilshire to the Board of Ethics. Does anybody have any item that they want removed from the consent agenda? No removal? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next, Mayor Pelchat has requested that the city recognize the month of April as the Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month. The proclamation recognizes the dedication of CARE House of Oakland County in working to break the cycle of child abuse and neglect, and its partnership with community organizations and agencies to offer programs and services aimed at preventing child abuse. Is there a motion to adopt the proclamation declaring April 2019 as Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month in the city of South Lyon?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next, I'd like to invite the public, if there's anyone who would like to come up to the microphone and speak. Okay, council, public comment is closed. I do not see Bob Donahue here tonight for downtown discussion. Is that correct?
That's correct, but I can give the board as well as the residents and people in the audience an update on what Bob was going to report on today.
Okay, the chair recognizes the city manager for the report for the discussion of the downtown. Go ahead.
The DDA has finalized a fiscal year 2019-20 DDA budget, and we just received latest TIF revenues for the DDA. All that information will be provided and included within the budget that will be presented to council for their meeting coming up. DDA has had continued discussions with the owner of the Corner Cafe at 101 South Lafayette regarding the wine bar license, information regarding building plan renovations and for code improvements, fire safety improvements, and permit requirements. Significant progress has been made, and they just recently submitted information, and we expect that will be on the April 8th City Council meeting agenda. Also had continued discussions with staff and potential purchase of downtown properties. The 135 East Lake Street, the RCA Stone Building, and 111 North Lafayette Artcraft buildings have both been sold. I know the RCA building has their closing has already taken place. We're waiting to hear on the closing for the the closing did take place on the RCA building. We're waiting for when it's going to take place regarding the Art Craft building. Restoration of the facades are going to be based upon historic photos for accuracy, and Bob has been working on those, getting those items to the new owners. There's continued development of potential partners and sponsorship opportunities for Farmers Market, DDA, and community programs and projects. They're pursuing sponsorships for this year's market that runs from May through October. And the last item is that the DDA has transmitted a copy of the DDA's DDA and TIF plans to the State Department of Treasury as required by the new DDA and TIF law, Public Act 57 of 2018. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions?
Okay, the chair recognizes Mr. Richards.
Paul, okay, thank you for the update on the critical buildings downtown that we've all been looking at, of course. And now, is there any word on who's buying 135 and 111, okay? And what their intended use is going to be?
I do not know their intended uses. Bob may know the exact names. I don't have their names written down, so I'm sorry I can't provide that information to you this
Will that
evening.
be made available to us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because it'll be public information because they are the new owners.
Are there any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to new business. First item under new business is the Aqua Guard Bar and Filter Screen Rebuild. Paul, you placed this on the agenda. Would you like to provide a brief introduction, and then we can wait for questions during the discussion part of the motion?
Yes, I can. I'll open it up and leave it also to Ron Beeson from the wastewater department to discuss this as well. They're requesting to recondition and rebuild the existing AquaGuard bar and filter screen. The bar screen automatically moves in a wide range of floating and suspended solids with the influent wastewater. Provides both fine and coarse screening to protect pumps and all downstream processes. This screen has been in continuing use for operation for 16 years. Ron is recommending because the chain is stretched and rakes have been breaking that this has led to excessive wear in the elements, causing holes in the screen and reducing the effectiveness of the bar screen to remove this particular debris. He's attached the quote as well as pictures. So this is a proprietary equipment provided by Parkson Corp. The award contract to them is in the amount of $88,950. There will be a future budget amendment coming to this. This particular account, 592-557-970, is not necessarily over that dollar amount yet, so that's why there has not been one that was brought before council. And Ron is here to answer additional questions that you may have, or perhaps give a little bit more information before.
Absolutely.
Okay, before we start, let's go with the motion. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion that we approve the purchase, the refurbishment of the Aqua Screen Guard here.
Do you have a price, sir?
$88,950, I believe it was.
You want to start your motion over again?
I'll make the motion that we award the contract to Parkson in the amount of $88,950 for the refurbishment of the AquaGuard bar and filter screen rebuild.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I did.
Is there a second? Is there a second to the motion?
I did.
Okay, thank you. Discussion. All right, under Robert's rules, the person who makes the motion is extended the courtesy from the chair of starting debate.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Kennedy, I'd like to extend the courtesy. Would you like to start?
I would, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. So I've had the opportunity to spend a couple of hours with Mr. Beeson over at the wastewater plant looking at this particular piece of equipment. And the pictures probably don't do it justice. It's in pretty rough shape. And what happens when it gets to this point or beyond is it stands the potential to damage other equipment further downstream, the pumps and so forth. And what's going to happen here is it's a delicate balancing act based on our discussions to get these people to rebuild the new one, to get it in here, to man the thing on off hours where you're going to be doing this on a manual basis for about a week and a half, I believe it was, Ron, while they actually install this thing in segments. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
We hope that it's installed in 4 to 5 days.
Okay.
Is the estimate.
The only other thing, and I mean, obviously, it's not an option. I mean, it's something that's critical to the operation of that wastewater plant. One of the things that this particular item brings forth and to highlight, certainly not looking to point a finger of blame towards anybody, is this is the reason we need to capitalize and focus on that capital improvement planning and asset replacement program, because the condition that this piece of equipment is in did not just take place and occur since we last approved the budget last year. This piece of equipment probably needed to be replaced a few years prior to this. And this is just one of those things we need to stay on top of. And it's not saying, again, not pointing the finger of blame towards anybody, just reemphasizing why we have to, focus on capital improvement planning as part of the way in which the city operates. So I'm glad you brought it to the council here, Ron. I mean, we'll get the thing done. I know you do a great job like you did with the water tower, and nobody's going to notice missing a beat there when it goes in. So that's all I have, Madam Mayor Pro Tem.
Councilwoman Walton?
Thank you, Ms. Mayor Pro Tem. I'm not sure what to call you tonight. Thank you. I actually had the same concerns in remarks as Ms. Councilmember Kennedy. I didn't understand how this just came to be in front of us when we had a couple budget years and it didn't get put onto the budget.
As far as maintenance on this, there's very little maintenance you can do. This is in an existing building. It's very corrosive. I think Mr. Kennedy there can abide to that. It is a screen that is constantly running. I mean, it's been in service for 16 years. The maintenance that we've done, grease, oil, through the years, we have changed two of the guide rails. The upper guide rails have been replaced. The brush has been replaced, and the brush is there to clean off that screen. The bearings have been replaced on that brush. Other than that, visually looking at it, about 3 years ago, we had a problem with it. A big piece of debris was attached to the rake, made it to the top floor. It caught on there's a shroud on the top, and it caught on the shroud, bent that shroud towards the rake, and it did break a row of the rakes on one of the sides. When you have that happen, you can't, because you're placing the whole screen, you can't just replace just one of those rakes. You would have to go through the whole screen. So that and the stretching of the chain, there's motor overload. So it's a process of, we can't over tighten it, or the motor overloads will fault it, and you can't have it too loose, or it'll sag and drag, and then it'll break off more of the rake. So you're right, there's very little you can do other than visually look at it and tighten those chains. Other than that, there's very little maintenance to be done.
So it just became time.
It is time. I had a rep from Parks and come out last August. He inspected it. His interpretation was 16 years is pretty much the lifespan of a bar screen. We've done the maintenance that's required by the O&M manual, so there's nothing else we can do at this point.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that.
Is there anyone else?
I got something.
Chair recognizes Mr. Richards.
Hi. Ron, this is all sort of thrown in your lap here in the last year or so. We don't have a superintendent coordinating all this stuff in the long term as we have had in the past, and I understand that. I'm sorry I wasn't able to make it out there to talk with
I
you and
understand,
visit
yep.
this site, because I haven't seen this, and I want to see this, okay, see where it operates and how it operates, because totally, all I got is the pictures that you've given us, which is great, okay, but I mean, it's for this much money, okay, on an item that's not much longer than from me to Steve over here.
It's 23 feet.
Oh, it is
The chain-
23
yep,
feet?
20 feet, yep.
I stand corrected.
Yes.
Okay.
So I wish you did come out. It spans from a sub-basement through a floor up to an upper floor level. It's 23 feet. That makes the screen
Okay.
itself 46 feet long.
Okay,
So,
well, we gotta see it, okay?
yeah,
And,
you're correct, yeah.
I'd like to see 3 competitive bids on this one for this much money, okay? I feel it's in the city's best interest. And that isn't made out of, I was surprised when I read the makeup of the composition, that's not made out of stainless and tungsten carbide or anything. That's
The
a
shroud
composition.
the shroud is made out of all stainless steel.
It is stainless steel?
All the
You didn't
shrouds.
say that on that
The
sheet.
shrouds, I guess you would have to come and look at this, but the shroud that encases the screen is all stainless steel. Everything that is in the wastewater is stainless steel. The motors are not, they're explosion-proof. The gears are explosion-proof. Anything that is not stainless steel or coated corrodes very quickly in
Oh,
that
sure,
room.
yeah.
So the bearings, they are not, you can see the corrosion on those. Any of the receptacles, light switches, they're all explosion-proof, and it's a corrosive area. It's one of the worst in our plant. The gases from the wastewater, they havoc on everything in that room.
Okay, well, I'm going to pass on this this time around, and
We'll set something up. You're more
we
than
can,
welcome.
we got to do a little bit more thorough examination of this matter, okay? Because this is out of a clear blue sky bang. It wipes out $100,000, okay? We owe it to the voters to tell them, what are we doing, okay? We're, and one thing or another. I've never seen this at
Right.
all. Anyway, that's what I'm saying.
This screen was put in an existing building, so what they did, they actually cut this into 3 sections in order to make it fit in the existing building. It's at an 85-degree angle, it's 23 feet. This is an unusual large screen at a quite an angle, so it makes it more difficult to do any work on that, especially trying to change that screen itself. That's why we hired Parkson to do this. It's going to be dangerous, and we have to get it done in an extremely time. In order, we'll be bypassing this screen. The bypass, the screen is 2.5 gaps in between it, so we'll manually rake this until they are done and complete with the job and put it back in service. Right now, we have gaps and holes in there. Probably 3/4 to an inch in some spots. So that's letting debris go through that screen and gets into our pumps and actually hinders our biological treatment. So the purpose of the screen is to catch any of that coming into the plant. Everything that flows into that plant, which is 1.2 million gallons a day, passes through that screen. So it's a critical piece of equipment. It's in one of the worst areas in our plant. Like I said, anything that's not stainless or plastic in that environment is corroding and rusting. As far as maintenance, like I said, there's very little maintenance we can do. We did do the skid plates or the up top. There's 2 upper. Other than that, and tightening and adjusting and visually looking at it, there's not much we can do.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilman Kibble.
This is a pretty hostile environment that this screen is running in, so nobody wants to hang around in that for terribly long. But one of the problems with, and I'm actually surprised that we don't have a disclaimer on here for having to have competitive bidding. This is a proprietary piece of equipment, so it isn't something that you can just go to another vendor and get something off the shelf that would serve the role of this. So that's why we're not looking at 3 bids. So.
And many of these bar screens aren't as big as this one. It's not 23 feet. They actually take them out of the channel, put them on a flat surface, a dry surface, and a safe surface outside somewhere, and do it there. This one has to stay in place. There's no way we can get it out of that building. So it's a crew of 3 that will come out and have to do this. And I hope it's done within 3 or 4 days. Once they get going and their expertise, I think they can do it, or that's the plan.
Well, and we caught it in time, so nothing hazardous is.
That's another thing.
Yeah.
When the Parks and Rep came out, he suggested, we do it as soon as possible. Will it last a year? I can't tell you. Can it break
I don't think
tomorrow?
we should be
It
thinking of
can.
rolling
So
the dice
I would-
on that.
I would rather do it as a scheduled maintenance
Right.
repair job than having a critical failure of that, and then we have a mess. So I think this is the way to go.
This helps us too, because now we have a clock that we have a good understanding of what the lifespan of
Right.
that thing is. So.
And again, this is the only company that will work on this, and we see that a lot in our wastewater plant. There's,
Thank you.
so,
Chair recognizes Councilman Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Ron, just for the benefit of the residents here, you know, when we're over there, part of the solids that are being filtered out in that initial stage of filtration there are those quote-unquote flushable wipes that should not be flushed
yep,
down.
flushable wipes, rags, plastics, wood, grease, solids.
Yep. So just for the
That's-
benefit of
that's
our
what it-
residents, it says
Yes.
flushable, shouldn't be flushed, okay?
No, not at all.
And again, I commend you for, you know, being proactive to try to make the repair based on your schedule as opposed to letting the equipment dictate the schedule for you.
Yes.
That's all I have.
Any other questions? I have a couple that I wanted to discuss with you. First of all, Paul, where did you say in the budget this is going to be coming out of?
It's count 592-557-970 for the capital equipment. Right now, we are not over on that particular budget item, but we will be going over with the additional purchases, and that's why we will be coming with a budget amendment on this. That's why it was not brought prior to this time.
Will some of the money be able to come out of the capital equipment?
It'll be able to come out of that particular account because we still have more money than just $88,950 in there. And then we'll have to make a budget amendment so we can purchase the rest of the items that were already budgeted this year.
Okay, so we're not going to have to tap into any fund balances in order to do this purchase?
Yes, we will, within the water and sewer account. What I meant was really that just as of right now, we are not tapping into that particular fund because we still have money left within this budget line item within the 2018-19 budget. But because we have additional items coming before council for purchase that were already approved as part of the budget, we will have to raise that number that's already in this particular line item. So that's why we will have a future budget amendment.
Do you have any idea of what we're talking about?
I think it is close to about $80,000 or $90,000 worth of equipment that is still going to be purchased by the water and sewer account that has already been approved by council when they originally approved the budget last year.
Can those be delayed until the next fiscal budget year?
I'll have to look at what those items are. I don't think you really want to delay any of the purchases that were already approved. As I had mentioned with my manager's report, that there's a lot of improvements that we need to make that we're going to need to accelerate because they were not made prior to this year. And I believe that we'll have to make those, maybe some of them even before the end of this year.
Okay. The concern that I have with this clearly is the fiscal impact on the budget. And I'm a little bit bothered by the fact that you were aware of this problem back in August. And I don't understand why in August, if you had somebody here, why this didn't come forward then, because we could have started work. I mean, I'm just letting you know. It's a fairly large budgetary item, you know.
That's correct. And it was slated for next year's budget. After talking with HRC and talking with the rep, they agreed that maybe we should look at this sooner than later.
And that was in August.
The rep came out in August. HRC was, it wasn't too long ago.
Okay. What would a new screen cost?
The new screen, if you just get the shroud and the screen,
Yeah.
it's 130 to 140,000, minus labor. To install the screen, it would be at least 25% of that, maybe more,
So you're looking at almost twice the cost.
twice the cost.
Okay.
It's the labor to do anything in that room. That's where we're running into the expense. And when they put that screen in originally in that building, there was a lot of labor involved. You can't take the roof off. You can't make the door opening any bigger. You have to basically do what they did, and that is separate the screen into 3 sections and reinstall it.
Okay, I want to go to the proposal itself. On the proposal itself, I had a couple questions, and I just want to make sure I understand exactly what the city's going to be paying for. who is going to do the actual installation?
Parks,
Okay, Parkson, they're gonna bring somebody up
we're
here,
bringing a three-man crew,
okay, they're gonna come up here,
equipment,
and they're gonna do all the work.
they are.
Then I had a question, are their services, all three of their services included in the 88,915? Because it says additional startup service can be purchased for $1,000 per day plus travel and living
No,
expenses.
we don't, no, we don't need additional startup.
Okay.
I mean, it's already in service, they're just doing a repair, it's not a new screen.
Okay. And the next thing that I kind of wanted to ask is, who is on a maintenance program over there? Is this an item where somebody every quarter is checking on this and taking a look at it?
This is done, this particular unit is done monthly, where we grease it, we check the oils, and we visually look at this almost every day. We'll go in there, but because only a portion of that is exposed, you can't see what's going on. You can't see the wear plates on the top. You can't see down below in the wastewater. This sits in a channel that's 5 feet deep. That section is in the wastewater. So there's not a lot of maintenance that you can do. You can do the visual looks, and you can do the brush and the bearings up top, but other than that, it's difficult to do maintenance other than the greasing and changing the oil. And it has motor overloads, it has safety switches, those you can look at those to make sure they're functioning properly. But other than that, this bar screen has been very, very reliable, and 16 years of running in this corrosive atmosphere in wastewater, it does wear.
Well, here's my concern a little bit, is that when, I don't know, did you go to the terms and conditions? When you look at the proposal, it takes you to a website for additional terms and conditions. And those terms and conditions, if you haven't read them, you might want to, because it has timelines in there for reporting discoveries, for reporting defects. So somebody should be aware that there's a second set of terms and conditions that go with this proposal. And my concern on that has to deal with the warranty. And it appears that they're only warranting these parts for a year.
The parts that they replace, yes.
Yeah. So if you're not able to get in there and to monitor and take a look at this screen, then how are you going to determine whether we have a warranty issue? Because you only have 1 year from when they do the installation.
You're right, and that's not unusual for this kind of equipment. In fact, it's 90 days on the labor, so we will be visually looking at that. We'll know if it's working properly. We have a chute that is connected to this that goes into a compactor, and we can tell how much we're producing. That alone is going to tell us if it's working correctly. We have motor overloads. If they fault out, we know that there's an issue there. There's very little that could really, once they do the screen, that could go wrong. I mean, they're replacing everything. They're replacing the guides up, lower, top, their bearings, the brush. The only thing that's staying there is the shrouds, the explosion-proof motors, and the gearboxes.
Well, I thought they were replacing some of the rakes on it.
Oh, all that is part of the screen. The rakes, that whole screen, the rakes are part of the screen. So
Okay.
all that is being replaced. There's 6,000 some pieces in that chain alone, so.
Okay.
Or in the,
So it's not like you're going in and selectively replacing the
No.
rakes? Because then my question was,
nope,
then what are you going to do about the ones that you're not replacing?
they're all being
Okay,
replaced.
okay.
Because of the age, they become brittle, so it's time. It's,
Okay, I have, yeah, just a moment. The chair recognizes Councilman Kibble.
Just for clarity's sake, the screen is the filter, is the chain. That's all one assembly. So as it's operating, they can inspect it as it rises, and yeah,
Okay.
you can keep your eyes on the whole thing. So you're not looking into particular, like the bath that it's it's running in. And secondly, I wanted to ask, the money that's going to be supplementing this fund is from the restricted fund anyway, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is money that's dedicated for
For
just
water
this
and
type
sewer
of
only.
activity.
Correct.
So these are enterprise funds.
That's correct.
Chair recognizes Councilman Richards.
Ron, where it says on that inside page there, like Maggie brought up, okay, $1,000 for 3 guys or a day, okay, as plus expenses. Is that common fare in this kind of industry and this kind of work? That's a blanket tag, okay, that you,
It varies. It's not common, but in this instance, I mean, if we could have got away with one person or two, I mean, it would have been a lot less, but because of this design, they need 3 people out here.
Okay, the chair, chair recognizes Councilman Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. And part of that, Ron, is, I mean, the weight of the unit, okay?
The weight of the unit.
We've talked
yeah.
about that and what it's going to take to actually, wrestle that out of the hole. And one of the things that the water wastewater plant did over the course of time, since this thing was initially installed, is this thing used to run on a continuous revolution.
Correct.
And then at one point, you realize that it doesn't really need to do that. And so to actually help prolong the life of that piece of equipment, you set it up so it would index, I don't know, a couple of feet at a
feet,
time there.
Yep.
So basically, that's why it takes so long to see the whole
right,
thing.
we increased the lifespan by many, many years by doing that. It used to run a full cycle for the first 3 or 4 years, which was unnecessary, so.
That's all we had.
Okay, Tim, I have a question for you. This is a purchase that falls within the ordinance, which would require 3 bids unless the city demonstrates or states on the record that it would not be feasible to take 3 bids, and i.e. meaning that it's proprietary. Proprietary is not in the motion, so what would you suggest, that the motion be amended?
Madam
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem, the ordinance 2, section 2-224 allows for no competitive advantage. You're not seeking bids. I think the specialized equipment, that it's proprietary, does trigger that. I think there's also a component of services that appear to be of a professional nature that require certain qualifications. So I did talk with the city manager about this. I think it would be belt suspenders to make a motion to waive the competitive bidding process under section 2-224.
Okay, the chair requests that Councilman Kennedy amend his motion to include a waiving of City Ordinance 2-224 for the reason that the purchase falls and is considered a proprietary purchase. Is that sufficient? Tim?
If you're going to make an amendment, you would have to vote on the amendment. right?
Yeah, but is that amendment okay?
The language. that
The
she
language,
just
okay.
read.
I mean, it's 224, and it provides, there's the provision that allows for the council to waive it under certain circumstances. I think you've had a record made that those circumstances exist.
Then he can amend the motion then to say that we are waiving the bid requirement under 2-224. You want to just amend your motion?
Sure.
And we'll vote on that first.
I'll make I'll amend the motion that we're going to approve the purchase with Parks and waiving the 3 bid requirement by waiving the 2-224 because it is proprietary equipment.
All right, we're going to call a vote on the amendment. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Do you want to have the second in the amendment too?
Oh,
No,
sorry.
no, you first do the amendment.
He's got to second it first.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, the second, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, sorry.
I thought Rose had done the original,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, with the amendment being seconded, I'll call for a vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The amendment carries. Now for the motion itself. The motion's been made, it's been seconded by Rose Walton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion okay, one, no, motion carries as amended.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
thanks, Ron.
Our next item on the agenda. This deals with the first reading of wireless facilities and public rights-of-way ordinance. This particular item was put on the agenda by the city attorney. Tim, can you provide a very brief introduction to this, and we'll take questions during the discussion?
Yes, I will try and stay on the point. The state legislature, as part of its lame duck session, adopted and approved a statute that basically requires or authorizes wireless providers to use the public right-of-way for their facilities. And this is poles, cabinets, and antennas is the primary issue. They sometimes locate these on other utility poles and existing poles from other utilities or governmental entities. There is also federal legislation that deals with very much the same issues, and they do not always agree. What this ordinance does is it tries to work these into a more typical right-of-way permit process where they apply, it's reviewed, the permit is issued, there are conditions to it, they must maintain it. By statute, under both the state and federal laws, there are what are called shot clocks, where once the city receives an application, and it has to determine whether it's received a complete application within a certain period of time. Once it receives a complete application, it has a certain period of time in which to make a decision. There is a distinction between state and federal law, whether it is, if you fail to make the decision within that time period, whether it's deemed granted, is the phrasing that comes up. These are highly technical areas. I'm happy to take questions. But this is an ordinance that has been prepared not directly by me, but I've had several detailed discussions with the expert in my office that deals with these things. And you'll also see on the agenda there's a resolution that will be used as a placeholder until the ordinance can become effective after second reading.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, the chair recognizes Councilman Kibble.
I make a motion to approve the first reading of the wireless facilities and public right-of-way ordinance amending Chapter 87 of the City of South Lyon Code of Ordinances to reorganize existing Section 87-1 through 87-21 as Article 1 and to add Article 2, Sections 87-51 through 87-68.
I'll second.
Discussion.
Discussion. The chair extends a courtesy to Councilman Kibble. You made the motion. I'd like to know if you want to begin the debate.
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
There's a number of things. The shot clock thing was kind of an interesting thing, which to me means that we're going to really have to be very organized about knowing exactly all the things all the information that we're going to expect to garner before this thing starts to move and the clock starts. We're going to have to, I'm thinking, checklists and all that kind of stuff to make sure that nothing is overlooked so we don't end up getting caught unaware. But so I just want us to end up being very mindful of that and prepared in that. There's also some language here in the shot clock aspect. Let's see, it says second or, this is in E of number 2E. At the end there, it suggests second or subsequent notices of incompleteness may not specify missing documents or information that was not delineated in the original notice of incompleteness. Whoa. How are you supposed to know what is and what isn't on the list?
Well, I can explain that. So,
Okay,
Madam
please.
Chair, if I may, Council, this shot clock concept and the concepts involved in both of these statutes are not unfamiliar. They relate in, the Metro Act has some of this component, has components to this where the providers are entitled by right, essentially, to use the public right-of-way for telecommunications facilities and wires. The cell phone tower issue, also, they have federal and state statutes impose these shot clock concepts. And the idea is to force the government to get out of the way of the industry, get your act together. These are coming. You either get out of the way or you get mowed over. The provision Councilmember Kivel raises is you are not allowed as the governmental entity to be a moving target. Oh, I forgot to add that you owe me, you have to submit this. You have to submit a coverage map. You have to submit the specs about the electricity. You are correct. We need to be organized, checklists. We get one shot. You identify what's incomplete or determine that it is complete, and you process it from there within the timeframes.
Okay, see, that wasn't the way I had interpreted this. I thought that we had already provided them with the full list of things that they needed to provide to us, and then since they hadn't satisfied that list, now it's saying that we don't have to tell them again what it is that they're failing on?
Madam Chair, it's really designed to prohibit the regulator from adding new things.
Okay,
If you
no,
didn't
that's a
raise it
whole
the
different
first time
animal then,
around,
yes,
you
okay.
can't raise it later on.
No, that makes perfect sense. There's some things that are coming up in the next issue as well, but it does pertain to this as well, in that some of our right-of-ways, we assume, that they impact us because it's local to us, but some of the right-of-ways are for the county, RCOC's right-of-ways. And as I said, it is probably more specific to the next discussion piece where, there's some co-responsibilities of properties that, we need to end up coordinating. So I'm just kind of curious, is that pretty commonplace? I mean, where RCOC is going to be cooperative and by nature to help us get through this whole thing?
Madam Chair, I would say this ordinance sets up and puts the city in a position to be the primary regulator.
Okay.
I believe that's the approach we take to even the county roads within our jurisdiction. We want to be in control of what goes
Well,
in
absolutely.
our streets.
Our aesthetic is going to be important.
The state statute does require and addresses if there are multiple jurisdictions having authority over the right-of-way, that there be, as part of the application process, that the applicant demonstrate that they have received whatever approval they need from the other entity. So it may be, again, there's going to be a learning curve on this particular area of law because of the way it's been rolled out. And it may be that somebody on Lake Street that wants to put up a wireless pole and an antenna has to get both city and road commission approval because we both have jurisdiction. Now, one of us theoretically could say, if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me, but we are not taking that position. We are going to require anybody using the right-of-way for these wireless facilities to come and get a permit unless otherwise exempt under these statutes and ordinance.
Okay. The particular, I think, important aspect of this, which I don't remember reading it in this particular one, but the height of the poles, I think, was a real sensitive issue. There's some advantages to going with the federal in that you get more annual fee off of it than you do the state margin, but at the same time, you're adding another 10 foot to the infrastructure. So, but this is tomorrow. I mean, this is the technology of tomorrow. 5G, and my understanding is substantially more antenna intense than what we're enduring now with 4G. 6G is supposed to be like 60 times more than what 5G is. So we're going to have to either get really used to a lot of antennas, or they'll have to come up with some technology that streamlines that.
Madam Chair, if I may, there are several points that the council may want to weigh in on from a policy standpoint. So the height is one. There are some communities that are basically taking that additional federal level fee for the taller pole off the table, saying we're not going to charge you essentially for that extra height. There are aesthetic issues. So you have a downtown, you have residential areas. The state statute does allow you to impose different stealth and concealment requirements for new poles is primarily, or replacement. If they co-locate or locate on an existing pole, you may not be able to control the stealth or the appearance in the same way, but if they put up new poles, you can definitely do those types of things. There were some questions received about that. This is 5G. This is a different strategy than the cellular towers that came through decades earlier. This is a different model, different business model. Some providers are likely to play nice, some may not. So we are telling communities that we represent, there is a learning curve here. These provisions may be subject to challenge. And we've tried to build in flexibility with respect to the demands, but comply with the law. And there are waiver provisions. If you read it closely, there's a few instances where if we can try and push them, move a pole one direction or the other. In residential areas, they have to be within the side yard or on the lot line so that they're not in front of the house. The underground area, I've received questions about that, and that does raise some questions about how we can accomplish that. The one thing that is clear from the federal level statute is you cannot prohibit them through that underground utility area. You can't prohibit them from providing their service. So you will get challenges on that. So there needs to be a certain amount of flexibility on how you address this. There are parameters that the equipment has to fit within as far as cubic feet and height. They get a certain bump based on whether it's co-locating on an existing versus a new pole. So this is very detailed stuff, and I don't feel like I'm necessarily giving you the detailed overview. But if you have questions, please let me know. And you're going to get another exposure to this at a second reading, theoretically.
If I could just comment that the Metro Act thing seemed quite intrusive and we were losing control. This makes that look like child's play. So, I mean, this is going to be much more an intrusion on us than I think the Metro Act ever could be.
Madam Chair, you do have some control, and this ordinance and the resolution that go along with it are designed to try and use that control to regulate in a reasonable manner so that you can get along with these providers. Have them come in, they're going to provide service to your residents, that's the good side, but they are going to be in your right-of-way. There's certain things that you want to prevent. You want to maintain control over your downtown streets and in your residential areas, I think are this city's primary concerns.
But this is going to be ubiquitous. Every community is going to be dealing with this, so none of this is going to seem out of the ordinary, or out of the norm, I should say. In no time, it'll be, I like the idea that we're trying to be mindful of the aesthetic and all that stuff, but I don't think that it's going to be it's not going to demolish our society here, so,
Just as an anecdote, I have some of these at the end of my street in Ann Arbor, and I noticed them when they went in, and now I drive right by them without giving them a second thought. But it's a non-intrusive. It looks like a short light pole with a little box on the top.
Right.
Some of these are not that. They're more obtrusive, and if you have particular desires about what these look like in particular areas, we should have that discussion tonight and move that direction. You are allowed to do that, but the caveat is they could be challenged.
The commingling's where it gets crazy, because that'll be a big ornamented tree.
The chair recognizes Councilman Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. So I provided the city attorney with a 2 or 3 page email over the weekend with a number of questions that I had regarding this installation, primarily in the area of aesthetics, primarily in the the downtown area, but also in those areas in the residential areas in the city that have underground utilities. They don't have poles, and this will be totally new to them. I also included some pictures that show what these installations could look like if the provider is left unchecked to just do whatever he'd like to do in as least costly a manner as possible, or what we could potentially specify to make it as unobtrusive as possible. I've discussed this with the city attorney, and I would I would suggest that we get the information we need to verify that we can specify the unobtrusive model, and we have a better understanding of what the spacing requirements are for these units, to have a better understanding of what the total installation population is going to be. I mean, I read in one spot, it was like, the poles are subject to a 250-foot radius. I read in another location, those poles that can be, 300-400 yards apart. So it isn't real clear how many poles we're talking about. I guess I'd like to know what that is. And I'd also like to make sure that we can specify what the poles look like that we're going to get. I'd also like to make sure that we specify and dictate how well they're going to maintain those installations. So when the pedestal and the base settles and the pole's leaning, they're coming back to straighten that up. If a car bumps it and it's knocked out of kilter, or it starts to rust because of, scratches, whatever, they're going to fix that to maintain the aesthetics of the neighborhoods in which they're installed. I think this is important, especially in those residential areas where they have underground utilities. They don't have these poles, and they've been used to having that clear view of field of vision. So these things need to blend with the surroundings as best as possible, and I think we need to establish clear construction standards that the provider has to adhere to if we're going to allow them, when they come in here to do their bidding.
Yes.
Madam Chair, so as to the spacing, this does not, the statute nor this ordinance get at the spacing, which would amount to a limitation on the number of these poles. And one of the things that comes out is you don't even have to be a wireless provider to get a permit to put up wireless poles or facilities that the providers can put their antennas on top of. So what you end up with is this potential competition between different providers, and I understand the concern, but I don't think that you also get into if you require a separation, we're not clear whether that will potentially interfere with their ability to provide
I'm not requiring a
services.
separation, Tim. I'm trying to understand what the technology requires. That wasn't provided to us. I asked the question. I asked you the question, what is the spacing that these installations require? And I didn't get an answer on it.
There isn't one.
And so, what is the technology? I've heard a couple of different things. I'm looking to see how many of these poles potentially are going to go into any residential subdivision. I would like to know what the potential population is. And that's the answer I didn't get. I'm not trying to specify that they can only put so many poles in. I can't do that and prohibit them from installing that technology. Okay?
If I may, I don't know that I will be able to answer that question, not knowing the industry. But we did note in my discussions internal in my office today that these are not inexpensive installations, and we would expect the industry, driven by financial motives, to at least put the fewest number of poles in to provide the service that they are trying to provide.
And I just wanted to know what that number was.
I'm not
That's
sure.
all I'm looking for.
I don't know that I have that information for you.
And the other concern that I have is, and I know that we receive some revenue as a result of the number of installations we're going to have on this thing. But I'm concerned about down the road as the technology advances and they find a way of getting, broader broadcast area out of the 5G network for these small cell installations that, they find that they need half of the installations they originally put in. And we need to make sure that they're held accountable to remove the inactive ones, not just abandoning things in place in a residential area and leaving the poles there that actually aren't functioning. So these are some of the concerns I would have that need to be in that ordinance, so the residents of the city end up with something that's palatable to them as much as we can do.
If I may, those provisions are addressed. So the maintenance repair obligation to maintain these is in the ordinance, and it does provide that if they fail to do that, the city can use the bond that we will be holding to remove and cover the costs that we incur to deal with their issue. As a practical matter, we were discussing this, and if you draw parallels to the telecommunication industry, they do not remove these facilities very often. They don't stop and abandon them. But I think it is addressed, and there is also a revocation process under the state statute. It was not put into the ordinance, but it does exist and can be used.
Thank you.
The chair recognizes Councilman Richards.
Thank you, Mayor. Tim, the deadline, okay, is April 19th of next month, okay, for this. Because that's set up in such a way, is that mandated, okay, for our benefit to approve, okay, or is this a housekeeping issue that everybody's got to deal with on that particular time frame? What is the status of that?
Madam Chair, as I understand, the FCC has a declaratory ruling and order that under certain interpretations, our office is taking a position that must have the adopt and publish is subject, I think putting it out on your website may be sufficient for that, but publish your aesthetic requirements and other regulations prior to April 14th. So we are advising our clients to avoid any problems with that effective date, which is based on an interpretation of the federal FCC order and ruling, that we take care of this now and have those in place. The community, that's why we have, for 2 readings of the ordinance, you will not become effective prior to April 14th, given the newspaper publication requirement. That's why the second item for new business tonight is a resolution to adopt just the aesthetic and safety components of the ordinance. So it will be a placeholder until you can get the second reading and the actual ordinance regarding wireless facilities in the roadway becomes effective. That resolution will fall away once you have an ordinance in place. And the other concern that we have is the general thought in our office is that you want to go as far as you can on these things now because of the non-discrimination requirements. If you say, we're going to try and tighten these up later, somebody may come in and get approvals under your looser version, and anybody new could say, I'm not complying with your tighter regulations because you're discriminating against me. Somebody else has a different approval. I'm no longer going to comply with your more strict. I'm going to go with the other one. And while there's that certainly would line up as a fight of some sort. So we are trying to come at this from, and there's 23 or 24 of these aesthetic type standards. It may be that over time those get changed based on actual practice and experience, but we made an effort to try and contact our communities and get as much in there as we could, and we felt that was reasonable under the way the law is written, both state and federal. So going back to the date issue, it's an interpretation. We're playing it safe and trying to get you in a position where you have regulations in place prior to that date.
You still have the floor.
Okay. Thank you. All right. In the opinion of yourself and your firm that has handled this, I'm sure, for other communities and such, is this going to cost us money down the road, okay? Because this is a long-term thing, more or less, with this 4G to 5G to 6G technology, okay? It doesn't cost us anything right now, but in the future, will this be costing the city directly money, okay? But I would like your opinion and the opinion of your law firm on this.
As I sit here right now, I don't see a cost issue for the city. These providers come in, they have a statute that says under certain circumstances, they get the right to use your right-of-way. There are application fees that you can charge them. You can charge them a fee to put up a pole, maintain it in your right-of-way. This is not an unusual concept, given the Metro Act and the Uniform Video Franchise Act. Other companies and industries are doing this. This is very much the same model. I don't see this costing the city money. It's really the legislature forcing and twisting your arm to make your public right-of-way available for these providers and setting the price for doing so. So you don't get to negotiate those prices.
I agree with, thank you, Tim. I agree with Councilman Kennedy's position on the aesthetics and the whole works, and I hope it can all work out, okay, for our benefit. Thank you, that's it for me.
Anybody else? The chair recognizes Councilman Kennedy.
So Tim, that means that, we're going to, we approve the first reading of this ordinance with the caveat that you're going to look at, as you said, that we lock it down, we specify as tight as possible, obviously without precluding the ability for them to do the installation, that they maintain, that aesthetic approach that we're looking at. We can do that, right?
Yes, that is the general approach. We know the state legislature and the federal government through FCC order are mandating that we make our right-of-way available. If you're going to come in, you're going to follow these procedures, you're going to give us this information, it's going to look like this.
Right.
And we will be limiting that to the downtown area and the residential areas which are specifically called out under the state statute.
And that would be great. Those pictures came from what other cities have put in place.
And I will likely be picking up the phone to call you and anybody else that wants to have input directly. I have some concerns about making sure that whatever regulations on stealth concealment and aesthetics are broad enough and flexible enough to accommodate all players in the industry so that we haven't chosen something that a company has to challenge because they can't fit in that container, to use that terminology. I have concerns about that. But you cannot discriminate amongst these providers. You can't discriminate between the electric company, the phone company, and the wireless providers in your right-of-way. So there's a uniformity that has to be addressed that I want to be cognizant of when determining what these stealth and concealment requirements are that the city will include and ask for.
And I would challenge them to explain why they can't get their equipment in the same configuration. Because, and often what happens in that situation, they don't want to spend the money for those components to fit in that application.
And a point well taken, and I will try and deal with that, but remember, the fallback is you end up in a courtroom defending an aesthetic concealment stealth standard.
I think the
Is that
people
where
of the
we
city,
wanna
the
be?
people of this city deserve that fight, okay?
And it's to me, it's an eyes wide open. I don't know enough about the industry to answer that question without more research. I will certainly be accepting any input that you have. I want to know what this council wants to see, and, I will be evaluating to make sure that it looks reasonable, it can be achieved by the industry. And as I said, we want to come at this from I think generally the approach is more restrictive because you can loosen up, but it's much tougher to tighten down.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilman Kivel.
Well, personally, I would like to see us have some real efforts to get as much cohabitation on poles as we can possibly get away with. The alternative, perhaps to solve Mr. Kennedy's concerns, is, okay, I can't fit in to cohabitate on that guy's pole, so I'm going to install my own pole. So we're littering the view with even more poles. So
That concept is built into both the statute, the Fed rule, and this ordinance as kind of pulling those things together. I think there's market forces involved and there are regulatory issues involved as well.
Mm-hmm.
There is an incentive to co-locate facilities on the
Well, I mean, it's in everybody's best interest. If they're sharing costs of the same pole, then everyone's getting some benefit. It's simply a matter of, you can only house so much stuff hanging off of a pole, especially if you want all the cables to be
Correct.
internal in, a column, so.
So, Madam Chair, there are limits. I forget if these are in your ordinance or by statute, but it's 3 co-locations per pole. And that's another thing we'll be looking at the concealment issue is, can they truly fit 3 in there? Is there a practical limitation? Just eyes wide open kind of thing, to make sure we understand what we're asking for.
Secondly, the idea of our language, who knows when somebody might end up asking for permits. But I would like us to have an ever-evolving review to try to refine this thing as much as we can until such time as we start getting people to that are pulling permits, because if we have language changes before anyone's taken action, it doesn't impact, they won't be able to use that argument about, that guy got it for that, so I want that too. So I'd like us to end up trying to stay on top of this as much as possible to educate ourselves so that we have a better understanding deeper in the timeline that we go. We'll have more understanding of what we can get away with and what would be in our best interest, and that we act on that understanding. And thirdly, to Carl's point, the only cost this will have to the city is if we're users on this system. I mean, the rest of it is purely making money off of housing facilities, so.
The chair recognizes Councilman Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Just for the sake of clarification, and to address Councilmember Kivel's statement, the bulk of my discussion centered around those areas in the city, those residential areas in the city that don't have any poles. There are no poles to co-locate on. These are all serviced by underground utilities, either provided through a rear easement or a front easement, okay? So these are going to be totally new installations. There are no poles to take advantage of. That's my biggest concern. Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Well, just to
Chair
clarify too,
recognizes Mr. Kivel.
even if that is the case, I mean, as more vendors come through, you're going to have different providers, the Verizons, the AT&Ts, Sprint, all those people. So they're still going to have to land on something with their equipment. So those are going to be cohabitated as much as we can get away with. So we need to be mindful of, that all that equipment has to fit into those same poles, so.
The only thing that I would add is, I would have to agree with both Councilman Kivel and Councilman Kennedy, is that in discussing this with individuals that are in the subdivisions, there's tremendous concern about how these are going to look. I think the city manager can sort of vouch for this, that the Comcast installation has not gone as perfect as maybe some individuals thought. Some of the new installations are adding additional hardware, very large hardware, to people's properties. And actually, these properties are beginning to look like, utility sheds when you drive in. I mean, the Comcast hubs are huge that are going into people's lots. And now you're going to add in another utility. I mean, there's a point, as one neighbor said, there's a point where I don't want this on my property. I don't want my property devalued. I don't want my real estate value to go down because I'm housing a unit for 15 other homes that are going to tap into this. So you are going to get some resistance, and I think that we have an obligation to ensure that whatever installation, I get it, we have to provide this, but I think we also need to push and say, you're coming into our community, these are our standards. And I agree with Councilman Kennedy. You know what, if we have to go to court a couple times to enforce our standards, then I'm okay with that. I think we're the first one that's on the ball field. And we're the ones that are here that are going to say, this is our standard. You want to come in, then you fit our standard. We are talking about multi-million-dollar corporations with billions of dollars. Don't tell me they can't fit a product that is aesthetic and acceptable to the homes that are in this community. I mean, I think we can all agree, if there's any criteria that we're all agreeing on, it's going to be this aesthetic issue. Because I'll tell you, that's where the community is going to raise the most amount of concern. So, and I want to thank Councilman Kennedy for his email. It was extremely informative. So, but I think he's hit on the thing that I think we all agree on. It's the aesthetics. So, are we ready to call for a vote? Okay. We have a motion. It's been seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next on new business, the resolution establishing standards for wireless facilities and other infrastructure installations in the public right-of-way. Tim, did you want to make any additional comment on this issue?
No, the agenda note, I will just highlight from the agenda note, this resolution would adopt and establish the aesthetic, spacing, and underground standards from section 8757 in the ordinance that was just approved for first reading.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion to approve the resolution establishing standards for wireless facilities and other infrastructure installations in public right-of-ways as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion on that issue?
I was just curious, do you think that we should try to formulate whether or not the 50-foot federal or the 40-foot state should be the goal for the poles?
So I asked this question internally. I don't think you can say no to the 50-foot. It's
Oh.
just a matter of whether you collect the fee for the 50-foot.
Oh, is that right? Okay, because there was some language that seemed a little bit hinky that said that if it was a state pole, you could, if it didn't comport to the state height or something, you could charge more. And I thought that we had the ability to impose ourselves on dictating whether we were going to the 40-foot limit or the 50-foot limit.
I think this is the disappointing part about this particular issue is you have the state that didn't match up with the feds, and maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's a bad, but the state has used 40 feet, and our office brought to the council an ordinance to limit through the zoning ordinance anything in the right-of-way to be 40-foot tall, knowing that this statute was coming. But generally, you can't say no to
Okay.
it. It's just a matter of whether you collect the fee under the federal framework or the state framework.
Okay. And this is just a placeholder until the second reading on this?
Yes.
All right.
Are there any other questions? We had Councilwoman Walton, who has temporarily left the dais.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
To give you a little foreshadowing, the state statute allows for permitting fees. We will be bringing, likely with the second reading of the ordinance, a fee resolution to set those application fees. Not exactly sure what that looks like yet, and I have to speak with City Manager Zelenak to kind of get a handle on what we think those are realistically, because again, any fee has to be connected to the actual cost incurred by the city in processing. And there was a comment earlier by one of the council members about fine tuning this, and one of the disadvantages is the municipal entities don't have a lot of the expertise in this industry, so processing this usually ends up in the hands of your municipal engineer. Do they have experience with these things? Because they tend to deal with right-of-way improvements, sewer, water, telecommunications, who's digging up what in your roadway. They tend to get involved in those. So DPW will be involved, your engineer will be involved. The part we don't really have access to readily is the industry insight, somebody that processes these on a normal basis. But we'll see what HRC has to say, because they do have a number of communities they represent, and hopefully they are seeing some of these. And also, I would point out, this council and the city have dealt with something very similar to this in the fiber tech that came through in 2017, which is essentially this same thing. We arranged a license agreement with them, which dealt with height and some of the appearance issues for their antennas on existing poles.
The chair recognizes Councilman Kibble.
To speak to that, I had given that some consideration. We have engineers and we have people that understand their own departments and things. There's got to be people that we could buy their expertise to give us some insight into some of this technology and I'm sure that it's been rolled out in some areas of the country already, the higher end techie places. I would love us to reach out and figure out whether or not we could end up affording some advice from people that already know a good way to get there. So I'm hoping everybody's comfortable in looking into that.
Councilmember Kennedy has already alluded to that, and back when we dealt with fiber tech, I did notice a couple of those communities, so I'll be pulling out my file on that and looking at that material to see if there are some established criteria and evaluate them against the new statute, see if we can use that type of information and follow through as needed.
The chair recognizes Councilman Kennedy.
And Tim, actually, those pictures, I think, were either from Denver or Boulder, Colorado. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Are we ready for the vote? Okay, motion made, seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is the budget. Does anyone on council have any items that they would like to bring up with respect to the budget? Moving on, next is the manager's report.
I'll remind council that next week we have scheduled for our budget meeting for April 4th at 6 p.m. You're going to be receiving a copy of the proposed budget actually this week. As was mentioned tonight, we did discuss some of the issues relating to water and sewer. We're working with staff and our engineers to outline improvements that are needed for the water and sewer plants. These items are going to be coming for you with the next council meeting as well as several other council meetings. Election information, want to advise everybody information are going to be published in the near future regarding our upcoming elections and petition availability for nominations of candidates for mayor and council. Election will be held on Tuesday, November 5th, 2019. Last item is Thomasville Site Condominiums. This project received final plan development site plan approval at the Planning Commission meeting held on March 14th, and this will be coming before City Council at your next meeting. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Do we have any questions?
You know what, I will,
Okay, the chair recognizes Councilman Kivel.
just in, my wife and I walking the dog, boy, the bike path is in really rough shape. I hope that come budget time that we can find some pot of gold where we might be able to start addressing some of those failings. It's been a very, very long time, and it, obviously, with roads being such a have such a stark need, you're not going to turn a blind eye to them for the bike path, but I would really like to find out if there's some rec grant, something, even, I don't know what the solution is, but there's some really troubled areas out there.
Well, and if I may, Madam Chair, the two items. One, yes, we are addressing within this year's budget an area north between 10 and 11 mile. That'll be addressed. There's some damaged area that we have within the budget. No, we have not found the pot of gold, but we are looking, obviously, recreation grants, state of Michigan grants for something like that. Matter of fact, employees at a 2-day class on grant writing today and hopes to assist us for any grants within the future.
Excellent.
I got a question.
Council,
Richards?
Carl.
the chair recognizes Councilman Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Paul, okay, I noticed this time in our package, you included the Thomasville summation from Planning Commission. I've never seen that done in that way before, but I'm happy that you did it, okay. But in this particular instance, I'm anticipating that we're going to have quite a discussion, even on this third stage of this matter, when it does come before council for a vote. What I'm getting at, would you rather we discuss that openly more so tonight a little bit, or let it go and till the night of the vote, rather than get in front of a big discussion in front of the clients? Because he's already said in there, okay, that the ownership has changed, all these questions, okay, it doesn't reveal who it is, and he said, earlier on, he said he's gonna sell out to Paldy when he's 50% done, 50% through the project. Okay, my experience with Paldy, and I am a shareholder, they don't buy 11-acre parcels of land. They will go for 50s and 100s and 150s. They don't get involved in smaller parcels. Anyway, I'm just throwing that out as a comment, okay? Would you rather discuss some of this sticky stuff tonight, or whatever you want to do, open meeting before the vote next time around or something, or what? How do you want to go about this?
Point of order, please. The point of order pertains to what is on the agenda. The item that Mr. Richards is requesting to be discussed was not approved on the agenda, so we are going by the call of the order. The call for the agenda tonight, that item does not appear, so we will reserve your discussion when it is on the agenda at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, next, we have our next public comment. Does anyone public desire to speak? Okay, council comments. I'll start with Councilman Kivel.
Okay, we had the MML's CAP conference was Tuesday and Wednesday. Mr. Kennedy and I and city manager had all ended up going out there. One thing it was actually very informative. A couple of the seminars were particularly interesting, and a grand session was very good with framing information exchange. It was just real nice in that there's ways that you can be more effective in conveying messages, and that was helpful. So, but the last session that I had gone to was the recreational marijuana is here, and it was conducted by a fellow named Andrew Brisboe. He's the director of this Bureau of Medical Marijuana Regulation for LARA, the state agency, and very well informed. And it's a long process. One of the messages that had come from this whole thing was, since the onset of medical marijuana language in the statute, we opted out. It was a very sparsely populated language in that whole thing, so we wanted to see things get fleshed out before we were looking at it in any terms that we might either approve or disapprove something. So we opted out. Then the referendum for recreational marijuana took place in the state, which kind of blew up the whole medical marijuana language. That's been frozen, and that's what they're operating on now until there's some conclusive findings that determine what the new language for the whole package. They'll end up resolving both medical and recreational marijuana. But Mr. Brisboe's advice to us was to start forecasting what we're likely to end up wanting to see from these statutes, because if we're not thinking about it at all and someone ends up foisting a challenge to our not having language that allows that kind of activity in the city, then we end up being put in a position where we're sort of fighting an uphill battle with somebody that's already armed and has an understanding of, probably a great deal better understanding of how they can manipulate the circumstances to their advantage. So I just wanted to give forewarning from this expert that we should have a conversation and try to determine if we've got any preferences one way or the other, what is known to date, and what needs to be revealed to really come to any conclusive conclusions. But I just wanted to give you that heads up. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Mr. Kennedy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. So tonight, I want to congratulate the Friends of the Salem South Lyon District Library for the year 2018. The sales from the book room were $17,000, which includes the sales they also have on Amazon. That was the result of 17 volunteers putting in over 1,700 hours to make that happen. Looks like 17 is kind of a lucky number for them. In addition, Andrea Meyer announced that the Friends of the Salem South Lyon District Library have been named Organization of the Year by the Kensington Valley Chamber of Commerce and will be recognized by the Chamber event at the Chamber event on May 15th. So congratulations to the Friends of the Salem South Lyon District Library. On another note, Active Face Strikeout Hunger event at the Pins Bowling Center yesterday was an absolute success. And again, I just want to thank the businesses from our community that helped that provided donations to help make it a success. That list includes Perfect Floors, Martin's Hardware, Co-Rudder Salon, Cook Automotive, Grand Trunk Home, the Lyon Book Den, Peter's True Value, Sunrise Dental, the Coral Sash, Lake Street Tavern, Advance Auto Parts, Romani Dentistry, and AutoZone, just to name a few. I mean, this type of support for one another is truly what makes this community so special. Finally, I'd like to remind the residents of our city that the fire department has received those smoke alarms and carbon monoxide detectors. They are available free to all city residents. Just call 248-437-2616 and request one. The fire department will deliver, install, and test the units for you. And finally, I just want to remind the residents that you are eligible to receive a free 64-gallon recycle cart that you can use to wheel your recyclables out to the street. This is part of an agreement we have with GFL. We're halfway through that contract, so if you're interested in receiving one of those, go to the city website, southlyonmi.org, click on the yellow Residents tab, click the link to Resources. Under the links of interest, there are 2 GFL links. Click on the one labeled gflusa.com/City of South Lyon. This will bring up a form for you to complete and submit to GFL, and they in turn will drop off that recycle cart at no charge within about a 2-week period. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Richards?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a few comments, okay. Over the last 3 weeks, a little bit more than that, I've been under the weather quite a bit, and I haven't been quite myself. I think I've been in and out of the hospital 3 times. And I'm on the mend, I'm recovering, and I got one more to go in April. Hopefully things will pick up through the rest of the spring here. There are a few things I can mention that highlight developments that have gone on, okay. I suppose I should mention the Historical Society. They're one of my favorites, and I'm an activist with them. The museum is not going to open up until May this year, okay, over at McCaddy Park. In the past, we've opened up in the month of April, but we decided to postpone it till the month of May this year, okay. That'll be on Saturdays and Sundays. We've eliminated the Thursday opening as we have for years. I want to make special note to the Bonner Group, now that they've divested themselves, got rid of the 2 stickiest properties in the middle of town, 135 East Lake Street and 111, 113 North Lafayette Street. Both of these properties are a real problem for the DDA and our development and our progress forward. And I'm happy for them that they've made the decision to make it move and let the next people handle this situation. It's certainly dragged on for years and years, and we're all going to benefit from this. The frost laws are on now, if anybody keeps track of that kind of thing. They went on last week. That means we're limited how much load the big trucks can carry in and out. And Active Faith has been active with me, and I got a new scooter today, new used scooter, which I'll be using from time to time because I certainly can't go great distances on my bicycle. Anyway, that's enough for tonight. Thank you very much, and have a nice evening.
Councilwoman Walton?
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. First, I'd like to say thank you to you for stepping up and taking place of our mayor while he's out of the office tonight and running a good meeting. And I would like to thank Craig Wilshire for volunteering for our, as I believe, our last appointment to Board of Ethics. And to keep in the spirit of Councilman Kennedy, I want to just highlight a few extra miles that some of the employees in town have gone. I've been reading a lot on Facebook. There was an employee at Martin's Hardware who went out to a car where a lady had a child that was sleeping, so she couldn't come into the store, but she really needed something. He came out, he got her order, he went in, got it, and brought her back her change. you know, just a little extra mile there. Mickey's Dairy Twist, they are open, and they also had a person come up to their window after hours. They still served them. You know, it's just little things like that that keep our city kind and keep us out there. And, oh, one more I don't want to forget is Fury Friends Cat Rescue and the Girl Scouts teamed up and did a great donation and collection event. And, you know, again, we're just keeping it kind. So let's keep on with that and keep going with that. And everyone have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a couple of comments. First of all, I'd like to encourage everyone to support the Longevity Foundation, their 5K walk run. It's going to start on May 18th. David Elkins and his wife have been leaders in this community, bringing the awareness and raising money for lung disease. We owe them our thanks. This is an absolutely incredible couple. They have literally dedicated their lives to finding cures for lung disease and raising money through the Longevity Foundation. So you're right, Councilwoman Walton, is that we do have a very kind community, and the Elkins family is just one of hundreds of examples of individuals that are working to improve people's lives. Next, I would like to welcome the students from Classic South Lyon High School that are here this evening. Welcome, gentlemen. Glad to have you here. Hope you do well in your studies, and I'm very, very impressed with the classes that you're taking. So welcome, and hopefully we'll see you at more city council meetings. So I just want to extend that welcome to you. Next, I'm sure everyone on council joins me in wishing Dan Pelchat and his wife Meredith safe travels as they enjoy a delayed honeymoon. I do want to let everybody know that Dan will be back chairing the next regular meeting of the City of South Lyon at our first meeting in April. And we all wish him blessings and safe travels as he comes back into the country soon. Last, I do want to say that it's been a pleasure chairing tonight's meeting, and I just want to let the community know that tonight was just an absolutely excellent example of the depth of experience and of the preparation that the council members take when they come to a meeting. These council members are very well prepared, well researched, and I think everyone in this community should be proud that this council sits here, deliberating and debating and thinking very careful about decisions that we're making on behalf of the residents in the community. So thank you for sharing your confidence in us, and thank you for inviting us into your homes this evening for those that are watching us on the video. Good night, everyone, and have a great week. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Meeting adjourned.